It's been a long time since I've done something like this. Excuse me. So, I've got the EA trial for 10 hours for NHL 24. And I'm going to go through and take as much time as I can to use up this trial time before I decide if I'm going to buy the game or not, just to do a franchise mode. Because it's the same as it was last year, and the year before, and the year before that. So it's really just a roster overhaul is all I'm getting it for. But I didn't do one last year, so I want to get back into this, and I've chosen as my team. I try to choose a team that has never won the Stanley Cup, and my goal is to try and get them the Stanley Cup. And boy, howdy, do I have a challenge out in front of me with the San Jose Sharks. The San Jose Sharks are in full rebuild mode. There is no disguise. We do not have Erik Karlsson. Obviously, in real life, he was traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We do have the assets that we got for Erik Karlsson, which is the nice part. That's kind of why I wanted to use NHL 24. So I'd have those assets, but this team is in a bad way. As we pop into our contracts and look at our centers, at least at the NHL level right now, we are currently in preseason. I've already gone through and done my hiring of scouts and set my scouts going. I'm going to do automatic for my scouts, but I do want to have some control over them at various points throughout the season because I need to nail this first draft. We start with our best player, probably, Tomas Hertl. He's our only player on the entire squad that has X factors. He doesn't have any gold X factors, but he does have silver. Not that I'd think it matters much in a simulation, but I mean, he's the only one that has a significant amount of talent on this team, which can be good and bad for us because he's 29 years old and he's signed to a 7-year contract at $8 million. San Jose, why? Why do we have these terrible contracts still on the books? He just signed this recently, so we are going to have him for a very long time. So it's kind of one of those things where we don't necessarily want to build around Hertl, but we want to make sure that he is happy and well thought of and fed well because he's going to be our guy going forward. He's an 87 overall. He's projected as a second-line forward. He's going to be our first-line centerman, maybe winger, depending on how we have our center depth. Hell of a shooter. Comparatively speaking, I mean, you got to think about how bad we are as a squad. Really good passer, surprisingly, for a 6'3", 215 sniper. Decent speed still. Decent checking and physicality for a sniper as well. So he's kind of a well-rounded player. So he's not a bad player to have. I just really don't like, and you can see he fits best on the second line with his coach. Something else we'll have to look at is the coaching staff. I'm probably going to let it the first year run with this coaching staff, and then at the end of the year, see where we're at and essentially decide if I want to keep this coaching staff or try and get a coaching staff that's more akin to my young crew. But the thing is with the San Jose Sharks, there's not a lot of prospects in the prospect pool either. We are in a really bad way. We need everything. We have Logan Couture, captain of the San Jose Sharks, in here since 2007. He was drafted here. He's a playmaker. He's not much worse off than Tomas Hertl, but some bad things about him. He's 34 years old, so he's going to be in the decline stage of his career. He is in this twilight, and we have him for 4 more years at $8 million. Holy Jesus. We have got to survive these terrible contracts, and that's not the only two. I do not mind Hertl's contract as much as I do Couture's. Couture's 34 years old. He's going to be here till he's age 38, and he's going to be well below this 86 overall and not worth that $8 million by the time his contract ends. And I can bury some of that in the AHL if I have to, but I feel like Logan Couture is a guy that if I could potentially find a trade partner, that would be one, and I might even have to retain, which I don't want to do. I kind of would just rather hang on to the player and not have to worry about retention because I'm already retaining for Erik Karlsson in this universe, and I think I'm retaining for somebody else. I have to look at the contracts. But this is my second best player, and he's also a center. He's a true center. He's not going to play any wing. Mikael Granlund's 31 years old, 83 overall. He can play wing, right side wing, or he can play center. Solid face-off guy, solid two-way forward. A guy that kind of just can be plugged in. He is at reasonably $5 million a year for 2 years, which is a reasonable setup. By age 33, I'll probably jettison him out to the Solar Winds and be done with him, or trade him at the trade deadline if he's got any trade value in year 2 of his contract, so that way it's expiring out. But yeah, Michael Granlund, not a whole lot here. I mean, there's not going to be a whole lot here. There's not going to be a whole lot down. Nico Sturm is a guy who's on the block by default. A guy who can play fourth line minutes for us. Somebody who I could move on from just as easily as I could keep him. He's an 80 overall. He's not going to get any better. 28 years old. Luckily, I believe he's on a reasonable contract. So that'd be the one feather in his cap is he's cheap and somewhat talented for the price point. So it's one of those guys that I definitely probably will hang on to for the duration of his deal unless I just get an offer that I can't refuse, which is doubtful from the computer. And then at center, and we are retaining how many contracts? We're retaining 2 contracts. I'm not sure which ones we are. We also have a buyout penalty, which I think might be retention in this game. No, retained salary 4.2. So we have almost $8 million in retained salary and buyout penalty. So we're already $8 million against the cap just in people that aren't here. So we're not in great shape. In the system, we do have William Eklund. The one knock on William Eklund, I do like that he's medium elite. I do like that he can play wing or play center. I like that he's 80 overall. He's currently in the AHL system, but he definitely will, I say definitely, he will more than likely get a call up to the big club and play at the big club year 1 of this franchise. He is medium elite. The one thing I don't like about him, he has no X factors, so that's kind of a drawback to him. But he's talented. He's a playmaker. He's only going to get better. He's got that medium elite specialty. He's not great on faceoff, so I'll probably, if I bring him up to the big club, he'll probably play wing. But it's nice that hopefully he can grow with the faceoffs and become a solid centerman and be a solid potential second-line center, maybe first-line center for us in a couple of years down the road. The best part about him is also he's cheap. He's on his rookie deal, so that's always a nice thing to have. He's not waiver eligible, which means I can send him up and down as needed. So if I feel like he needs development, I can send him back down to the AHL. But he probably will play with the big boy club with that 80 overall, wanting to be a third-line center or third-line player. Fourth-line player Ryan Carpenter in the AHL. Probably going to stay in the AHL, be a top-line centerman in the AHL. He's 32 years old. He has passed his prime. He's a solid player in the AHL level. These are AHL scheme fits that he's currently going up against. 1 year at $775. So basically, he's making league minimum. Not a huge deal there. Not much to report here. This is another guy I'd like to grow, Thomas Bordelot. He's a centerman, true centerman. He's 21 years old with top 6 potential. So we're looking probably a guy who'll be a future potential second-line center, maybe third-line center for us. He is a two-way forward. He's kind of small for a two-way forward. I'd like my two-way forwards to be a little bit bigger, be a little more physical. But he might grow into that role, being age 21 with that top 6 potential. He could grow into 84, 85 overall, maybe be at that level. But that's definitely a guy I would like to grow. He's in the last year of his rookie deal, though, so he might be a guy that he's currently listed as a minor check forward. Still can use the development. The age 21 kind of scares me a little bit. We'd like to see him be ready to be NHL ready at this point. He's not. Hopefully another year in the AHL will get him to the point where he's ready to roll year 2 when we have to sign him to kind of like a bridge big boy contract. Not a big boy contract, but a bridge contract. Then we have another prospect, Philippe Bysted. He's definitely going to be AHL material year 1. He's listed as another forward with top 6 potential at 19 years old. He's another two-way forward. He's a little bit bigger at 6'4", 205. So he's more my size range that I like to see, but definitely needs some work on his overall game. But that top 6 potential should bump up a couple of points in year 1 and hopefully get to the point by 2 or 3 years where he's contending for a spot with the big boy club here in San Jose, and we're going to need him because hopefully we'll be phasing some of these other guys out. He's currently on his rookie deal, so we're going to be burning the first couple years of his rookie deal. He'll be in the AHL developing and hopefully getting better. We'll see what we can do to get him better. And then lastly, Theo Jacobson, excuse me, bottom six forward, 57 overall. He's going to be depth. We're going to see about signing some guys. We'll be moving some guys back and forth between the big club and the small club, the AHL club, trying to get the best foot forward. This is a guy who's going to be basically an emergency depth piece right now. Don't see a whole lot of a future for him with the San Jose Sharks. He's only on a one-year deal, so probably after this year is up, we'll jettison him into free agency and let him find his way amongst another ball club or another club, and good luck to him in his future endeavors. Left wing, we have Anthony Duclair, and a lot of these guys, by the way, are going to be on one-year deals. We've got a lot of hired guns right now, which is fine for us. Anthony Duclair is in his prime still at 85 overall, another sniper. We can pair up with Logan Couture or maybe put with Tomas Hertl on that top line and make that top line a little more dangerous. A guy who definitely is not super great defensively, but has good defensive awareness, good offensive awareness, good speed, and has a little bit of a deceptive shot. So we're hoping that he does well in this one-year deal, and he may not be with us next year, but he's with us now. He may not be with us this full year. We may trade him at the trade deadline, especially if we can get some good value for him. But not a guy who's going to be in the future plans, but a guy that can be here right now, maybe be a bridge player for us for while we get these prospects in here. Mac Hoffman, another guy who's on the tail end of his career, 33 years old, another sniper for us. More than likely going to be a second or third line sniper for us, playing on that back end side with maybe compare him with William Eklund if we bring him up on that third line. Let Hoffman play a wing with William Eklund as a playmaker. Maybe play him on second line, but that would be something I'd be stretching a little bit. But again, with the talent level we have, I may have to consider it. I haven't really looked at lineups yet. Mainly looked at contracts and looked at what players we have and do we have any prospects in the pool. And the answer is no and no pretty much for everything. We're paying him $4.5 million. That's okay. It's a one-year contract. Another guy we might trade at the trade deadline. If we can get any sort of asset for him, we'll trade him and get those assets because we're in rebuild mode. This is not a team that's going to continue year one, and we're okay with that. Oscar Lindblom, another guy, top nine, another guy to play the bottom six area for us, two-way forward. So not a lot of offense here, but hopefully he'll be responsible defensively a decent bit. A guy who can play pretty much any of those bottom three lines decently well. Not a scheme fit for the top line, but I wouldn't put him on the top line unless we had injuries. Got another guy who's down here for 1 year at 2.5, so reasonable contract. But yet another trade asset at the deadline that we can move for something if we can find somebody who would actually want him. Philippe Zadina, this is a guy we're taking a chance on in real life, or the Sharks are taking a chance on in real life. Top six, low potential at 23 years. Been kind of a disappointment as a top 10 pick for the Red Wings back in 2018. He is a sniper. Probably going to try and give him a chance on that either that top line with Hertl, or maybe drop him to the second line and play him with Logan Couture. But I want him in the top six. I want to try and see if we can maybe bump this guy's potential up to top six medium. Maybe putting him with Couture as a playmaker or with another winger as a playmaker, which I'll talk about in the right winger section, will help Philippe Zadina blossom a little bit. But I'd like to not put him with another sniper. So I'll probably play second line with Couture, and I might put Duclair up on the top line. But this is a guy who's on a 1 year, $1.1 million deal. This is a guy we could easily re-sign. He's still young. He's still got room to grow. And we can put him on a nice little small bridge contract and see if that potential bumps up. And if it doesn't bump up, we move on from Philippe Zadina, and we win. It's a win-win for us. If he gets better, it's a win for us. He could be a building block for the future. If it doesn't work out, we're not heavily invested in him, and we can move on from him relatively quickly. Jacob Peterson, a depth forward, top nine, 24 years old. We've probably seen the best we're going to see out of Jacob Peterson. Nice thing about him is he does have some center capabilities. Not a great face-off guy, but he's better than William Eklund is, so that's one thing to consider. Bottom six flexibility is always nice. Another guy who's on a 1-year deal, but he's on the league minimum. Probably won't get much better than this, but a guy that would be a nice either depth forward, like a 13th forward for us, or in a pinch playing in that bottom 6 role for us. Giovanni Smith listed as a 4th-line forward. A grinder, so you always like to have the grinders in there that kind of can muscle up on folks. Got a decent face-off rating for a grinder, so a guy who could, in a pinch, maybe play center in a penalty kill role, which you wouldn't want to put a grinder in a penalty kill role with a low discipline. But a guy who could definitely wreak some havoc for us in the bottom 6, so it's always nice to have on your roster. Plus, he's still young, so he can maybe build up a little bit on that top 9 potential, but probably not a ton. He's probably maxed out where he is, but that's perfectly good for us. And he's on 2 years, but he's also getting league minimum, which is great for us because that gives us a guy who's got term, and we're not paying a lot of money to him. We're not expecting a lot out of him, but at the same time, he can give us some muscle in the bottom 6, and that's it for what's currently up here in the system. We don't have much in the left wing side, and what we have is not great. We have Adam Raska, 21 years old, bottom 6 guy. This guy's going to finish out his contract and move on. I generally don't keep bottom 6 guys for potential unless I absolutely have to, and I'm feeling like I won't have to. I feel like Adam Raska is just going to finish out his AHL career here with San Jose and the Barracuda, and then he's going to move on once his contract expires. I don't think I'm going to go work about re-signing him. Quentin Musty's a kid we drafted this past draft, 1st-round pick from the San Jose Sharks with pick 26. He's a power forward. He is currently not on the roster. He's playing in the juniors. We're definitely going to leave him in the juniors, let him build up a little bit. We don't need him up here right now. He's no use to us, and he's not under contract. We have control of him for 2 years. We'll see how he develops in those 2 years, and then we'll decide whether or not to give him a 3-year contract and get him onto the Barracuda at that point, or whether we'll move on from top 6 potential, though. I feel like by maybe the end of year 1, he'll be in that 70, 71 overall range with juniors improving him a good bit, and he'll be available to sign and pull up to the Barracuda maybe a year or 2, but we might just wait until we have to sign him, so that way we make sure we maximize our time with Quentin Musty, because he's 6'2", 197. He's a big kid, and he plays a power forward spot, which is usually a hard thing to get rearranged with everything, but usually if you can get a power forward, a sniper, and a playmaker together, it usually makes a lot of magic, so hopefully we can pair him off with maybe, if he gets good enough, quick enough, maybe like an Eklund and a sniper we have, maybe Zadina, and have ourselves a nice little young line moving forward. But we got to see how he develops first. So that's a little bit of future talking. That's all we have for left wingers in the system, so not a lot there. In the right wing side, we got Barabanov, who's going to be our first-line playmaker, paired off with Tomas Hertl, and potentially either Duclair, probably Duclair, honestly, or Zadina, depending on how I want to do it. I'm probably going to run Duclair out there and give Barabanov 2 options to pass to that like to shoot. I don't want Zadina. I want Zadina kind of try and boss him, so I don't want to take shots away from him. And I feel like Hertl will take shots away from him, whereas if I put him on the second line with Couture, that'll help him get some shots. Talking about Philippe Zadina, Barabanov is going to be a guy that's going to be passing the puck more often than not, and he's going to be dishing to 2 guys that like to shoot. So that first line, at the very least, will put some offense hopefully on the board. Maybe not a lot of defensive help, but at the very least, put some offense. Also, Barabanov in a pinch could play a center spot if he need him to, but with the 70 faceoffs. But he's a winger by trade, so we'll keep him at wing wherever we can. Kevin LeBlanc, he's going to be one of our key penalty killers, a guy who can definitely wing out on the penalty kill. He'll be a bottom 6 player for us, even though he's listed as a top 6 guy. He'll probably be on that third line, maybe bottom 9 would be a better way, because he might graduate up to the second line depending on what's going on. But a guy who definitely will play in the bottom 6 for sure. Probably do some penalty kill for us. Paid him a lot of money, but it's only for 1 year. Again, another trade asset at the trade deadline. I didn't look at Barabanov. $2.5 million for 1 year. Reasonable payout for Barabanov. We could get probably a good return if we needed to on trading him. LeBlanc, obviously a little bit more money, so it's going to be a little harder to trade, but a guy who could potentially net us some assets at the trade deadline if we want to move on, which we would from him. I don't think we would want to pay him for a long-term rebuild. It is an 82 overall. He'd kind of be just kind of lounging in those bottom 6 and wasting a spot, really. Luke Kunin, a guy who can still grow a little bit. He's an 80 overall, top 9. He probably won't grow too much more, but the nice thing about Kunin is he does have center capabilities, and with 75 face-off, that's actually pretty solid for a guy who plays center as a secondary position. So a guy, again, who could penalty kill for us, potentially anchor down a line as a centerman if we get injuries. Going to put him at a wing for now as a two-way forward, but he's a guy who can definitely play some penalty kill for us, former first-round pick for the Minnesota Wild, and a guy who, again, doesn't make a lot of money, is young enough to where we could potentially consider re-signing him or trade him away at the trade deadline. We have a lot of guys that we could potentially trade at the trade deadline, and we'll be playing a bunch of scrubs if we do that. But that's something we'll have to consider. Fabian Zetterlund, top 6 potential, so a guy who could grow, 5'11", 220 pounds. He's currently listed as a fourth-line two-way forward. A guy who's locked in at right wing, so he's not going to play anywhere else, but a guy who can be physical. A bottom 6 guy who has some upside to potentially become a top 6 guy is good for us, especially at age 24. Making 1.4 for 2 years is not bad, so we do have him beyond this year. So a guy we'd like to see grow a little bit. Doesn't have much compatibility with our head coach currently, which is kind of a crap deal. But a guy who will start in that bottom 6, maybe try and work his way into a top 6 role if he can get better on this team. We'll see what happens. The coaching staff that we have here, it may not happen, but that's a guy who could potentially build up. And that's it for our main roster. We have a ton of guys on the bottom end. I'm not going to go into too much detail with all of them, but Martin Kaut's a guy who hopefully can grow into a bottom 6 role for us. A guy we're not paying a lot of money. He's a two-way contract. He's going to be AHL year 1. Probably be a good player in the AHL. Got that top 9 potential. He might build up a little bit. Locked in as a right winger, so not a lot of flexibility there, but that's fine for a two-way forward. Tristan Robbins is 21 years old, top 9, so a guy we want to try and keep around for a couple of years. See if he can grow a little bit because he's already at a 75 overall. Top 9 usually maxes out in that 80 to 81 range, so we'll see if he's maybe hit his top end or if he's got some more top end to get. He's a two-way forward with some skill and some talent, but he's going to play at least the next 2 years in the AHL, at least the year 1 in the AHL. See if he grows a little bit, see if he can maybe make his way onto the main roster by year's end. Maybe by year 2 he'll be there. Daniil Gushkin, another top 6 low guy, 21 years old. He's a sniper. Want to try and get him to a point where he's building up and he's boosting because he's young enough to still get better, even though he's top 6 low. So generally speaking, that means he's going to get to his top end a little bit slower than most, if he gets there at all. Hopefully he doesn't lose that top 6 potential relatively soon. Wrong button. He's here for another 2 years. If he starts to lose that potential in the next 2 years, we'll definitely move on from him. But if we can bump that potential up to a top 6 medium while he's in the AHL, that would be awesome. Nathan Todd, filler guy, don't care. Ozzy Wiesblatt, right winger, top 9, other forward, guy who's going to finish out his contract and more than likely move on unless he gets better really quickly. Scott Sabarin, another guy, filler player, top 6, AHL top 6, I don't care. Brandon Coe, 21 years old, top 9, medium forward. He's listed as another forward. He's a power forward, a little bit small for a power forward at 188 pounds, but 6'4", 6'4". A guy who can basically play out this contract, maybe get another one, and see if we can grow him into somebody who could potentially be a bottom 6 guy in the NHL level. Kasper Haltunen is a guy we picked up in the second round this past draft, a sniper who's in the juniors right now, so we're not really worried about him. We just want to see that overall go up and get him developing so we can sign him. He's 6'3", 207. He's huge for a sniper. So that's nice to see. We'll see if those numbers go up as we move forward in the franchise. Mitchell Russell, bottom 6 guy, probably finishes out his contract and moves on, which he's got 2 years left at .835. He's a depth piece that's probably never going to see the ice unless he has to. And once he's done here in San Jose, we'll probably just let him go into free agency. That's it for the right wingers. Now we move on to defensemen, and our defensemen are terrible without Erik Karlsson. We start with Mario Ferraro as our best defenseman. He's got a top 4 potential, but I doubt he gets to it. I believe he's pretty much maxed out right now at 82 overall. He's at 25 years old, so he's pretty much tapped out. Good player overall. We're paying him decent for a top 4 defenseman, 3.25 over 3 years. So he'll finish out his contract, and we'll see where he is as far as if development-wise. Also a contract we could easily move on from because it's not very hindrance as far as the cash goes. You can see how it matches up with our current coach. Jan Ruda is a veteran we've got to play top-line minutes. That's really not what he should be doing at an 82 overall, but what he's going to do for us. He is signed for 2 years at 33 years old, which is kind of concerning, but defensemen kind of mature a little bit differently or regress a little bit differently in this game than other positions. They don't regress as quickly, but he is a guy who is in the back end of his career, so we got to keep an eye on him, maybe trade him at this first trade deadline or maybe the second one, but he will finish out his contract and we won't worry about him after that point. But he's a guy who's going to be playing for us now. Marc-Edouard Vlasic, here's another big, bad contract. 36 years old. He's probably going to be playing at best. He'll be playing the second-line defensive pair, which is what he's best at. You can see he doesn't match up with this coach at all. And even better, he's got $7 million on his contract for another 3 years. This is a guy who was a top-end guy in his prime, but he's not anywhere near his prime anymore, as you can see by his overall and his age. And he's only going to get worse, and that $7 million contract is only going to be more and more of an albatross as we move forward. We hopefully just can get done with this deal and move on. I could trade the contract and trick the CPU. I'm not going to do that because in reality, I would have to give up a ton of assets to move Marc-Edouard Vlasic in real life. So I'm not going to fleece the computer by saying, hey, Marc-Edouard Vlasic is available, and not have to trade much to get rid of him. That's not fair to the computer. Because they wouldn't do that in real life, so I'm not going to trade him. I've made a deal. I've gotten rid of Marc-Edouard Vlasic in a previous San Jose franchise for like a pittance, and it's just ridiculous. So I'm not going to do that. Matt Benning's going to be a good bottom pairing, maybe mid pairing defenseman to pair up with Marc-Edouard Vlasic. We've got him on a nice contract of 3 years at 1.25. Is he a great player? No, but for 1.25, we don't expect him to be great. But he will play a lot for us. Kyle Burrows, listed as a depth defenseman. He's going to be our third defensive pair player more than likely. He might move to the AHL. We'll see what happens, but he's on a 3-year, $1.1 million deal. So we got some guys that are signed for a long-term deal for little money, but they aren't good either. So it's kind of one of those, all catch-22s. And he's a veteran, so he's not getting any better than this. Radim Simic, listed as a minor top 2 defenseman. This is the guy I may move down to the AHL. And hide his contract down there. 2.25 for 1 year is not bad, but for a guy that's going to just be getting worse and worse, this will be his last year in San Jose, whether we trade him or whether he leaves in free agency at season's end. He's not getting re-signed here. I had Jacob McDonald, too. This is our depth guy, Jacob McDonald, 30 years old, listed as a minor top 2 defenseman. We'll probably have to keep him up here just to be the backup. Good thing, he's making league minimum, 1 year deal, so when he's done, we'll probably let him go as well. There's not much to write home about. I haven't shown much of the stats on these guys because there's not a lot to show here. They're not talented. This will be the one guy I probably call up to replace Radim Simic. That'd be Nikolai Nizov. Big guy, 25 years old, still has room to grow, but with that top 6 potential, he probably won't grow much more, unfortunately. But a guy who we have signed for another 2 years at 1.25. Big, wide body. Potentially could be a good work with our current coach up top. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But, yeah, this is a guy I'm thinking about bringing up and letting him finish his contract up at San Jose, the big club. Nick Cisic, 7th defenseman, low. So, basically, he's as good as he's going to be. That's pretty much all I can say about Nick Cisic. He's as good as he's going to be. He's on a 1-year veteran minimum. Nikita Oktoyuk, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. He's 22. Could get slightly better, but he won't get much better. He's another defensive defenseman, but he's still young at 22. So a guy we may sign beyond this year to see if he develops any further. And if he doesn't, a guy who could potentially be our third defensive pairing in the NHL or at worst, a top pairing AHL defenseman that we could call up in case of injury. Henry Thrun, 22 years old, basically in the same boat as the guy that I just looked at. He's a two-way defender, not a defensive defenseman. So better on the offensive side, not as good on the defensive side. Good in the AHL. We may leave him down here and hopefully see him develop. So we do have some guys we could develop into third defensive pairing guys, but we don't have anybody that's going to be studs, unfortunately. Leon Gawanke, he's as good as he's going to be more than likely. Valtteri Puli, a guy who needs to grow a little bit. He's in top 6 potential, so he can grow a little bit here. Not much to talk about again because these guys are just they're a ways off. We have an offensive defenseman here, Matthias Havlich. He's not under contract. He's currently playing in the juniors, or he's playing overseas, actually in Europe. But either way, he's not under contract, but he is under our ownership. We have his rights, so we keep an eye on him, see if he develops into anything, see if we want to sign him in a couple of years down the road. We just drafted him a year ago in the second round. Artem Guryev, again, a guy who will get slightly better with that 7th D potential, but he's not going to get much better than, say, a 77 overall. A guy we may hang on to for a couple of years until we get our depth in the AHL to where we want it, and then we move on from Artem Guryev. Gannon Larocque, top 6 potential. He's 20 years old. Hopefully he gets a little bit better this year. We see some improvement, but a guy who will be watching his contract. He's on his rookie deal. When that rookie deal's done, we'll see where he's at. And if he's worth keeping, we'll sign him. If he's not, we'll let him go. Luca Cagnoni, the only guy here with top 4 potential, but he is in the juniors or in Europe, I believe. So he's a guy who's not currently under contract, but we own the rights to him. So definitely going to keep an eye on this kid with his top 4 potential. And hopefully he gets to a point where he can become a guy who could maybe anchor one of our top 4 defensive pairings as a left-handed defenseman in a couple of years. Not now, but in a couple of years. Jake Furlong, 7th defenseman. Again, a guy I'm not really worried about. He's in juniors right now. But once he's done with juniors, we may sign him to an AHL contract, but he won't get much more than AHL for us, unfortunately, and that's it for our defensemen. And then finally, our goalies. Capo Kakinen is currently our starter, but he's listed as a backup, so we'll see how well he does. He's got 1 year left at 2.75. The good news about our goalie situation, we're not paying a lot of money. Mackenzie Blackwood's 2 years at 2.35. Backup goalie, he's right there. So we're going to run a tandem of those two guys out of the gate, see if maybe Mackenzie Blackwood grows a little bit, but it's doubtful because he's already at age 26, and it depends on when he turns age 27 as to whether or not that starter potential is going to lock, and that overall is pretty much going to lock at that point. But we'll see if one of these guys kind of lights it up as a starter. We definitely are open to a goalie competition, and we do not have a goalie in the system right now. We have Itu Makanyemi, who's a fringe starter. He will be our 3rd goalie in case of emergency. But our backup in the AHL right now is Mason Bopit, who does not belong backing up in the AHL. He needs to be on the bench, so we'll probably look at signing an AHL backup goalie that we can play in a pinch, because I do not want this kid playing unless we have injuries where we have to call up Makanyemi, or Makanyemi's injured and he has to get up there. He should be our 3rd goalie right now in the AHL, and currently he's our number 2. And that's not going to be a good long-term solution. We do need some depth in the goalie system. We don't have anybody that's young and growing and up and coming. Backup medium is basically a guy who might get to AHL level playing as far as AHL starter, but won't be a guy that gets much better than, say, about a 78, 79 overall. So Mason Bopit doesn't have a high ceiling. And fringe starter Makanyemi, he's pretty much at his ceiling. He might get to like an 81. A guy who will basically become a backup goaltender. He'll be a good backup, but he won't be a starter for us. We need to find a goalie either through trade or through draft that has that elite potential, so that way we can groom somebody to grow up with a lot of these prospects that we will be picking up, because we don't have a lot of prospects. That's pretty much. I'm gonna stop the video here because I wanted to just show off our situation. And go through our situation. No, I don't want the head coach to help. Dismiss. You can see this is our current line setup. I haven't done anything yet with the lines. I'll probably tinker with the lines between episodes 1 and 2 and get the lines where I want them, get through the preseason, and then start simulating some games and seeing where we're at and seeing how well we play and seeing what we need to do to tinker this up. So that's the lines. Let's look at the defensive pairings. We got Vlasic at the top end. I will probably rearrange this to try and get a little bit of chemistry, but chemistry doesn't matter as much in the simulation. It matters more if you're playing the games, and I won't be playing games. Goalies, we have Kakinen and Blackwood, so that's pretty much locked in. And then the AHL, These are our lines currently. Again, this may change between episode 1 and 2, and if it does, I'll show you what we've got whenever we get there. You can see our lines currently as far as defense, and then our goalie situation is this. Oh, we do have a guy, Beck Warm. Okay, so he's not under contract. So we do have somebody here. Okay, that's at least good. So he's not under contract for us, but he's playing in our AHL affiliate. That's a good thing. Okay. So we do have some guys that are playing for us that aren't under contract in the AHL. So that's okay. I may not have to go sign anybody then. I might just let him be the guy. Beck Warm, AHL starter. Yeah, he won't be much good, but whatever. That's pretty much it for this episode. Hopefully, we'll get episode 2 up at some point whenever I get a chance, and we'll get some simulations once I get the roster set up. But I'm going to get these rosters set up first, and once I get it set up, we'll get an episode up. So, talk to you later, guys.